Hi, hi, hi. Welcome back. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about how to silence your inner critic. Huge, huge topic. Huge, huge topic. Oh, and everyone has an inner critic. Whether you think someone does or they don't appear to, they do. Every single person on this earth has an inner critic. What I know to be true is that your inner critic loves to show up at the most inconvenient times, especially when you're expanding or growing. And it's funny because we get this motivation, we get this urge. It's like, yes, I'm going to do this. And then bam, our inner critic comes in and comes up with some of the most ridiculous stories, but these stories feel so, so real. So real. And there are many ways. There are many ways that you can silence your inner critic. And I say silence in air quotes. I'm not talking about getting rid of or suppressing or ignoring or pretending that they're not there because you can't ever get rid of your inner critic. And the more you ignore your inner critic, the louder it's going to get. What I'm talking about is silencing to the point where you can build a relationship with your inner critic. Your inner critic doesn't have to define or control you. And in fact, you can have quite a healthy relationship with it. In this episode, I am going to walk you through the exact process I use when my inner critic is rearing its head. And quite frankly, mine is a real bitch. Like a real bitch. So let's dive in. Let's dive in. The first one is to identify what it's actually saying. Sometimes we can feel quite overwhelmed when our inner critic is being really loud and, it can be flat and, that kind of thing. But understanding what's actually being said is the first and most important step. Because when our inner critic is really loud, we can kind of be hearing multiple things or bringing in extra, like additional fear and doubt and that kind of stuff. And we get lost in the noise. So it's taking a moment to identify what is actually being said. You can't change anything, silence anything, or move forward if you don't know what you're actually moving forward from, right? If you don't know what you're shifting, what you're changing, what you're hearing, you can't stop it. Right. And there are a few ways to do this. For me, I use breath work as a way of clearing my mind and then some energy coaching to really see what's going on. Because sometimes what I think it's saying, it's not actually saying, it's almost like a distraction. So breath work and energy coaching helps me get to the core of what's being said, get to the core of where it's coming from and what's actually happening. If breathwork and energy coaching aren't familiar with you, you can uncover or, acknowledge what the story is by just getting curious. You can keep delving deeper, layer by layer, as I said, like I do, until you can figure out what is actually being said. So it's like, okay, this is what I'm feeling. Is that it? What is that about? What is that about? What is that about? Until you get to the point where you're like, oh, that's it. And you kind of know when you get to that point where you like when you figure out and when you land on what your inner critic is saying, your body responds to that. It's like, oh, right, that's it. You feel it energetically and probably physically as well. If, and on a completely different side note, I do offer energy coaching and breathwork sessions. So if this was something that you wanted to use as a support to help you with your inner critic or anything else that you're navigating, please just send me a DM and we can chat about that. So with that, what is being said, it could be one thing or it might be multiple things. Okay. And so you just write them down. You write them down. We're not here to acknowledge and pretend they don't there. They're not there. We're writing them down. Okay. Then the next step is to do something to clear that energy, whether it is, again, breath work, whether it is a cleansing ritual, whether it's journaling, whether it's grounding, whether it's going into the water, whatever you do to clear the energy and the connection that is going on with your inner critic, do that. If this sounds too woo-woo, just kind of the easiest way to do this is chuck on some music and either dance or just shake or just, get it out of your body. The third step, reframe the beliefs, statements, or sayings. So, whatever your inner critic is saying, literally reframe them. But this is like, I'm not trying to trick you. I'm not making this hard. Reframe them. I'm going to give you some examples. I will never be successful. The reframe might be, I already am successful. I am successful in my own way. Another one, it's hard to make money. I never have enough. You might reframe that to, I can always make money and I decide where it goes. I can always make money. I'm not good enough. I'm trying my best and my best is good enough. I'm a slow learner, so I'm behind. I learn in my own way and there is strength in that. I'm right where I need to be. I hate change. Change provides growth, new opportunities, and surprise. I never have enough time. Time is always on my side. When I work with time, everything feels easier. See how those simple reframes, they're simple, right? They're basic. So we're reframing it just in a way that you can understand, or not even that you understand. Rewind that. We're reframing it so it shifts from being a negative, something that's putting you down, to something that feels supportive and encouraging. The next step, what current evidence do you have that what your inner critic is saying is truth? What current evidence do you have that what your inner critic is saying is truth? And current is a key word in this, right? Because you may be able to find evidence that what your inner critic is saying was true in the past, but the past isn't where you're living, right? So right now, in this moment, what evidence do you have to support that? Okay. That one can be tricky because naturally we're really, really good at finding fault, finding th problems, finding things that are wrong. So being really honest, because you could, it's one thing if you look at maybe a money story, be like, oh, sure, you could think of a million reasons why it might be true, but is that actually true, or is it you just creating stories because that's easier than being like, well, actually, no, this is true. Then, after that, what evidence do you have to support the contrary? What evidence do you have that supports you prove to your inner critic that what they're saying is not actually true? And then the last step is what am I calling in and therefore letting go of? What am I calling in and therefore letting go of? So allowing yourself to really lean into what you want, what you're bringing in, and in order to do that, what you're then letting go. Because majority of the time, your inner critic is coming up because you're about to do something. You're ready to bring something forward, you're connecting with your vision, you're about to step out of your comfort zone. So your inner critic's like, hey, I'm here, I'm not comfortable with this. So it gets really loud. So this is where it's like, okay, I choose to focus on this, and this is what I want, and this is what I'm letting go of. Okay. Going through that process, that's it. That's it. 6 steps. Going through that process will help you clear and rewrite your story. It might be, you might be able to sit down and spend an hour and do it all in one hit, or it might be something that takes a couple of visits. Either way, it doesn't matter, right? You're not wrong because it takes you longer to figure out or to shift it than someone else. Similarly, it might show up one day where it feels significant, but it's quite easy to move through. So no matter how long it takes, don't make yourself wrong for that. Okay. You also might have to do it multiple times, you know, especially the physical clearing. I often, multiple times a week will do a physical clearing, and that can look different every day. It might be look one way one day and completely different the next, but just allowing yourself to clear negative energy, clear the energy that isn't serving you, or clear stored energy. It doesn't even need to be negative, and then connect with the possibility, the expansion, the potential. Because ultimately, you have unlimited potential within you at any given time. Whatever you want, whatever you desire, you have the option of bringing that to life. You're worthy of bringing that to life. You have the ability to bring that to life. It's about what are you focusing on and how loud is your inner critic, right? If your inner critic is ruling your life, then it's going to be really, really hard to step away from that. Okay. If this is something that you would love support with, if you're like, my inner critic is a real jerk, please know that I have some spaces available for one-on-one calls. If you book a discovery call with me, the link is in the show notes below. We can chat about what might be the best way to support you. You know, it might be a one-off session, it might be some ongoing coaching, and there are also a couple of different group options. But I would love to support you because inner critic work is actually really fun to me. It sounds very strange. It's not as much fun when it's my own inner critic, but the process of going through that and getting curious with it feels like it's really expansive every time you do that and supporting you to, have these little truth bombs, have these little aha moments is really, really powerful. So if you know that your inner critic is really loud, I would so love to support you with that. As I said, just click the link in the show notes, book a discovery call, and we can chat about what you want and how I can best serve you.